I heard my wife's son say 5 words that split my life into a before and an after. I cut his brake lines. He didn't know I was standing in the hallway. He thought it was just him and his mother in that kitchen. By the time he finished his sentence, I already knew exactly what I was going to do, and it wasn't going to look like anything he expected. Welcome to Dad's Pure Revenge. If you're new here, I tell true stories about fathers who got pushed too far and found their way back to fair ground. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from tonight. And if you believe a family is only as strong as its weakest apology, hit subscribe before we get into this one. Before I tell you what he said, I need you to understand who I almost lost that night, because none of this means anything without him. His name was Elijah, not my blood son, my stepson from my first marriage, my wife Renee's boy from before we met, though by the time he was 9, I'd stopped using the word step out loud. He used to leave his shoes lined up by the door, laces tucked in, because I'd mentioned once, just once, that I liked things tidy. He remembered that for years. When I had my gallbladder out in the spring of 2019, he drove 2 hours from Denton, Texas. On a Tuesday afternoon, he was supposed to be at work, just to sit in a vinyl chair in the recovery ward and hand me ice chips one at a time, because the nurse said sips only. He never made me feel like an extra person in his life. He made me feel like the first one he thought of. My name is Walter Combs. I'm 54, I run a small HVAC company out of Lubbock, and for most of my adult life I thought keeping quiet was the same thing as keeping the family together. That's the flaw in me. This story is going to burn out. I used to hear something wrong in this house and swallow it. Tell myself it wasn't my place. Tell myself Renee would handle her own son better than I could. I was wrong about that more times than I want to count. And this was the last time I let myself be wrong about it. Elijah had a stepbrother of his own, Renee's nephew from her first marriage's side, a 19-year-old named Tyler Voss, who'd been living with us off and on since his own father, Renee's ex-husband Craig, moved out to Amarillo 2 years back. Tyler was not Elijah. Tyler was the kind of quiet that isn't peaceful. He clocked in late to the auto shop where he worked, clocked out early, and somewhere in between managed to convince my wife that every problem he caused was somebody else's fault first. It was a Thursday, March 12th, when the trouble I'm about to tell you started showing its face. 6:40 in the evening. Elijah had just gotten back from Fort Worth. He sold commercial insurance now, good at it too. And he'd stopped by the house to drop off a car battery he'd borrowed from me for his own truck. He didn't know Tyler was already there, sitting at the kitchen table, and he didn't know I was in the garage with the door cracked, elbow deep in a leaking water heater I'd promised to fix before dinner. I heard raised voices first, then not raised at all. That's the part that should have warned Elijah, if he'd known Tyler like I did by then. Tyler went quiet, and quiet from him was worse than yelling. "He's going to tell your mom about the money," Elijah said. I heard the scrape of a chair. "You need to just own it, man. Tell her you took it before she finds out some other way." There was a long silence. Then Tyler's voice, flat as a countertop. "I already took care of it." Took care of what? His truck. A pause. "I cut his brake lines this morning, before he left for the shop. See you at his funeral tomorrow." I want you to understand something about that moment. My hands didn't shake. My chest didn't do the thing you'd expect. Everything in me went very still and very clear, the way water gets right before it freezes. I was still holding a wrench. I remember that. I remember the smell of the leaking heater, mineral and warm, and I remember thinking, with a kind of calm that scared me more than panic would have, he means it. I didn't walk into that kitchen. Not yet. Some instinct told me that whatever I did next needed to be smarter than my anger, and my anger, right then, wanted to put that wrench through drywall. I stepped back out through the garage's side door, into air that was going cold with the sun going down, and I called Elijah's cell from my truck. Not the house line, so Tyler wouldn't hear a phone ring inside. Elijah picked up, confused, since he was 20 feet away from me on the other side of a wall. "Don't drive your truck tonight," I told him. "Don't ask why yet. Just trust me. I'm having it towed." He didn't ask twice. That's who he was. I called Big Country Towing out of Lubbock at 7:02 that evening and had them haul Elijah's truck, a 2017 Chevy Silverado, dark green, the one he'd bought used with his own money at 22 and babied ever since, straight to a mechanic I trusted, Dale Ferris, who ran a shop off 19th Street and had known me for 15 years. I asked Dale one question before I hung up. "Check the brake lines first. Tell me exactly what you find, and don't touch anything else until you call me back." He called me back 40 minutes later. His voice had the particular flatness of a man who doesn't want to alarm you and can't help it anyway. Both front lines had been cut clean, not worn, not rusted through. Cut, with a tool, deliberately, in a way that would have looked like a routine failure to anyone who didn't know what to look for. Dale said if Elijah had made it 15 minutes down the farm road he usually took home, at the speed he usually drove it, there was a real chance he wouldn't have made it home at all. I sat in my truck in our own driveway for a long time after that call. Renee still didn't know. Elijah didn't fully know yet either. He knew something was wrong, not how wrong. And Tyler was still in my kitchen, eating my food, sitting across from my wife, thinking he'd said what he said to an empty room. That's when I made the decision that would end up defining the next 72 hours of this family's life. I wasn't going to scream at Tyler. I wasn't going to touch him. I was going to let the truth do something I'd been too much of a coward to do for 2 years, which was speak for itself, loud enough that nobody in this family could pretend not to hear it anymore. I had Dale's shop photograph everything. The cuts, the fittings, the fluid pooling under where the lines had been, and I had him hold the truck exactly as it was, untouched, ready for anyone who needed to look at it later. Then I did something Tyler never saw coming, because it never occurred to him that I'd been standing in that hallway at all. I had Big Country Towing pick the truck back up the next morning and deliver it, not to our house, not to Elijah's apartment, to his father Craig's place in Amarillo, 90 minutes away. I taped one note to the steering wheel, 6 words, "A gift from your son, Tyler." If you've stuck with me this far, let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to stay calm on purpose when everything in you wanted to explode? Type calm below if you know that feeling. And if this story's got its hooks in you already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Because what happened 3 hours after that truck showed up in Amarillo is the part of this story people don't believe until I show them the paperwork. Craig Voss had washed his hands of Tyler's problems more than once before. Co-signed a loan Tyler defaulted on, covered a court fine after a reckless driving charge nobody in the family talked about at dinner. But co-signing debt is one thing. A cut brake line delivered to your driveway with your own son's name on the note is another. Craig called Renee within the hour, and I let her take that call alone, in our bedroom, with the door shut, because some things a mother needs to hear without her husband standing over her shoulder proving a point. She came out 40 minutes later. Her eyes were dry, which surprised me. I think she'd already used up her crying on smaller disappointments over the years, and had nothing left for the big one. She asked me one thing. "You knew last night. Why didn't you wake me up and tell me right then?" "Because you'd have gone straight to him," I said, "and I needed you to hear it from someone who wasn't me first, so you'd know I wasn't the one twisting it." She didn't argue with that. I think some part of her had been bracing for this exact moment for longer than she'd ever admitted to me. Here's where I have to tell you about the missed calls, because I counted them, and counting them is the only thing that kept me from driving to that shop myself. Tyler figured out where his truck had gone by Friday afternoon, once Craig called him directly. He called Renee's phone 11 times in an hour, then Elijah's, 29 times by that evening. since Elijah had gone quiet on him the second he realized what he'd overheard hadn't been a joke. By Saturday morning, it was 34 calls total across both phones, and by Saturday night, 38. He texted things like, "It was a joke," and "You're all overreacting," and once, close to midnight, "Nobody almost died. The truck was fine." Dale's photographs said otherwise, and Dale doesn't lie for anybody, not even for me. He had no idea what waiting for him at his father's house that weekend actually was. But he would. Sunday afternoon, Craig drove Tyler back to Lubbock himself, sat him down in our living room, and for the first time in 2 years, every adult who'd been quietly absorbing this kid's damage was in the same room at the same time. I didn't raise my voice once. I didn't need to. I laid Dale's photographs on the coffee table, one at a time, slow, the way you deal cards you already know are going to win the hand. "You set it to an empty room," I told him. It wasn't empty. I was in the garage. I heard every word, and so did Elijah's insurance company, and so will the Lubbock County Sheriff's Office, because I already gave them a statement this morning. Tyler's face did something I won't forget. Not fear exactly, more like the sound going out of a room. He looked at his mother's side of the family, like he expected somebody there to argue for him. Nobody did. Craig sat with his hands folded and didn't say a single word in his son's defense. And I think that silence told Tyler more than anything I could have. I'm not going to walk you through every hour of what came after. The report, the questioning, the fact that criminal mischief involving a vehicle carries real weight in Texas when there's intent to cause serious harm behind it. What I will tell you is what I did with the parts of this that were mine to decide. I own my Haffick company outright, no partners. And 2 years ago I'd started drawing up succession paperwork with my lawyer, the kind of quiet planning you do once you hit 50 and start thinking about what happens to what you built. Tyler had never worked a day for that company. Elijah had 3 summers, unloading units off trucks in Lubbock heat that would peel paint, never once complaining, never once acting like the work was beneath him because his stepfather ran the place. Monday morning, I called my lawyer, Deborah Whitfield, and I made the succession plan permanent. Elijah's name went where it belonged. Tyler was never in that paperwork to begin with, and I made sure that stayed true going forward. In writing, notarized, done. I didn't do it out of spite. I want to be honest with you about that, because spite would have felt like something, and this didn't feel like anything except correct. I did it because a truck lined up by the door with the laces tucked in had shown me, one small act at a time for 15 years, exactly who deserved to be trusted with what I'd built. And a whispered sentence in my own kitchen had shown me, in about 4 seconds, exactly who didn't. Tyler is not in prison. I want to be straight with you about that too, because this isn't a story about a man going to jail forever. The case moved through the system slower and messier than any of us wanted, ending in probation, restitution for the truck's repair, and a restraining order Elijah requested and got without a fight. Renee still speaks to her nephew, carefully, at a distance, mostly through Craig. I don't. That's not coldness. That's just where the line sits now, and I stopped apologizing to myself for where I put it. Elijah still leaves his shoes by the door when he visits, laces tucked in. Some Sundays he comes by just to sit in the garage with me while I work on something that doesn't need fixing, because neither of us has ever needed a reason beyond wanting to be in the same room. Last month he told me, out of nowhere, elbow deep in the same water heater I never did get around to replacing, that he doesn't think about that Thursday much anymore. I don't believe that's entirely true, but I understand why he needs to say it. I used to think keeping the peace meant staying quiet when something in your own house didn't sit right. I don't think that anymore. Some silences protect a family. That one was about to bury part of it. I chose to stop being quiet, and I'd choose it again tomorrow morning without blinking. If this story meant something to you, If it reminded you that showing up for someone, quietly and consistently, over years, is worth more than any amount of blood, do me a favor and hit like before you go, and subscribe if you want to hear the next one. And in the comments, tell me this. Have you ever had to choose between keeping your family comfortable and keeping them safe? I read every single one. Thanks for watching Dad's Pure Revenge. I'll see you in the next story.